All right, welcome back. We got a little bit more team hold racing as we have yet another Grand Prix coming at us this weekend. And as always, we're joined by James. James, how are we doing?
Oh, doing okay, Mike. How about yourself? Still excited after the Lando win down in Miami a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what our predictions were, but I feel like we all said Lando at some point, right? Didn't well, Mihal joined us? Didn't we all say Lando? I don't know if we said to win, but we like threw his
Yeah,
name
I
out
don't think
there.
we said to win. I think Mihal might have said to win, but I think we might
Hmm.
have had him on the podium,
Yeah, so
if
there
that
you go.
might have been
That's
accurate.
I feel like we
So,
finally get credit for picking a non-Red Bull to get on the podium.
well, that actually is the thing, and it's been a while. I mean, between that and Ferrari, it's been a lot of it's been a while since there hasn't been a Ferrari or a Red Bull, but most
That
of them have
was a
been Red Bulls.
It was a fun race too because it felt like regardless of what ended up happening, it felt like he was going to have a shot at winning, but it felt like a strategic move that ended up paying off. But then after the race, it felt like there was genuine excitement for Lando, like across, like seeing Daniel Ricciardo like go dap him up after the race, and Max seemed pretty happy for it. It seemed like everybody was rooting for Lando in a way, even though of course they don't want to lose the race themselves. They seemed okay seeing Lando finally get his first one.
Right. It's like if I'm not going to win,
Right.
we don't feel bad that Lando won, type of thing. Sure,
Right.
I wanted to win, but if
Yeah.
not, Lando's fine. It's not Max. And
Yeah,
it,
and
you
very
know,
very rarely do you see like a universal support of sentiment on Twitter too, and that's
yeah.
kind of what was happening as the race concluded. It was fun. That was a fun one to watch. I feel like that was the first one where we saw strategy come into play at the top. Normally, normally we're talking about strategic moves from positions like 6 to 9 or something like that because
Yeah.
the top is so clearly the top, and that wasn't the case in Miami.
Yeah, no, it paid off for them. They took a little bit of a chance there and they won. They were able to stay out later, and it turned out that worked out well. That's what you always hope for.
Right.
Often it doesn't work out that way. It's like, well, if we just get a safety car right at the right point, we can capitalize on it. And oftentimes it's not at the right point, and this one happened to be, so that worked out pretty well for them. So yeah, no, it was pretty cool. But part of the thing that's interesting on that too is why wasn't Max able to catch him? Because you'd think Red Bull has been the fastest car, and yes, he hit that bollard, that pylon, and evidently after the race they went through it, or maybe a couple of days later they finally got they did some analysis on the car and found that he pretty well screwed up the underside of that car,
Oh wow.
and he wasn't running 100%, anywhere near 100%.
Well, that
And that,
that was interesting because that was like the conversation that they were like, "Oh, the gamble paid off for Lando," and then when you're like looking at Max not making up any ground, I was like, "Well, I guess the gamble didn't even matter with Max
yeah.
because Lando probably would have held on anyways."
And the other factor, which I mean, sure, Red Bull's going to probably say that, so it doesn't look like that they're really not as fast as they want to think they are, or the image that they've projected everybody that they're the unbeatable team who consistently is faster, is also is that cars run differently. And I think I did a short about this last year.
Hmm.
Cars run significantly different between being out in front and being in traffic. And that Red Bull, Max does not have a lot of cars in front of him very often.
All right.
He's constantly running that car in free air. Now, Sergio doesn't. Sergio doesn't have the same results. That's probably down to the driver more than the car, but you
Mm,
got to take that into account. And the same thing with Lando. It's a lot easier to keep your car cool when you're out in front because you don't have to worry about sucking in hot air from the cars and limited airflow through the car. So especially in Miami where it's very warm, so that can make a difference too. But yeah, it's interesting because Max has passed people this year. It's not like he's you know been the pole sitter every race and just jumped out to a lead every race.
it is so
But
funny
yeah,
too that we're talking about this like, oh man, what was wrong with Max or what was wrong with the car? Red Bull like in shambles, and it's like, well, they finished second. Like he's
yeah,
still clear, like which maybe that just speaks to more the rest of the field, but because I was like pulling it up and I was like, wow, he still had like a 2.5 second gap between Leclerc and then Sergio still in fourth too. It was just like you're saying, it was just like so shocking not to see
yeah.
Max
Well,
without like a wreck, Max
right.
not winning.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, okay, Lando's leading now, but the field's bunched up.
Right.
Couple laps, couple corners. Max will be right on him. He'll get DRS, and by he'll go, and
Mhm.
order will be restored to the universe, and Red
Right,
Bull will be
right.
back on top. So yeah, but no, didn't work out that way. It just wasn't. Evidently, the car was pretty well chewed up underneath, which affects aerodynamics. Remember, those cars are the cars now are very very affected by aerodynamics and downforce and ability to keep the cars on the track through aerodynamics rather than necessarily all as much wings as they've had in the past. So I
Mm.
guess that all added up. But again, nobody was upset to really see it. No one was upset that Lando
No.
won.
And
So all in
I know
all,
we're gonna be looking more ahead than we are back at Miami, but
yeah,
shout out our guy Yuki. Shout out our guy
absolutely,
Yuki.
yeah,
Great. Yeah, I feel like he's quietly strung together a pretty good season so far
yeah,
for himself. And it like I know we always talk about the maturity with Yuki, but the consistency has been there this year. Much more than like I
most
feel like
definitely,
in seasons past, right? You'd get
yeah,
like a 2 week run where like, oh wow, Yuki looks pretty good, and then he'd start
yeah.
yelling at somebody. And this year's been pretty consistent.
Yeah, and also shout out to Daniel for the sprint finishing
Mhm.
fourth. Good for him on that. But then
Yeah.
again, it was interesting. They were talking about this morning on one of the practice sessions at Imola. The team was a little perplexed about the difference because Yuki didn't really do that well in the sprint, but obviously did well in the race. And
Right.
Daniel did really well in the sprint, but didn't do well in the race.
That was
And
bizarre.
the people were kind of scratching their heads on, well, what exactly was different about those that got those results? They were very happy for those results, but why wasn't Daniel consistent in both, and why wasn't Yuki consistent in both?
Mm.
So that was kind of a thing that was scratching. I mean, I think Yuki finished ninth or 10th in the
Sev
sprint.
Oh, in
Oh,
the
was he
sprint.
seventh? Yeah, in
No,
the
no, no,
sprint.
sorry, I was looking at the
Yeah.
main race.
No, yeah. No, you're correct on that. Yeah. So you didn't get any. I don't think he got any points in the sprints. So like, why were they able to get? Why? I mean, it's great they got one driver in each, but why couldn't they get both drivers in each? And I think they were, from what I understand, is they were kind of scratching their heads. They weren't really coming with good answers to what the heck happened there. So kind of more to be determined on that one. And yeah, we'll talk about what Yuki did in practice at Imola a little bit later.
Mm.
Um, but as far as some of the news, real quick from last week or from the past between the races, Alex Albon is re-signed at Williams for a multi-year deal. A lot of people kind of scratching their heads about that because it's like, well, there were rumors out there, and rumors are worth whatever you pay for them in many cases, that he was going to go back to Red Bull in 26.
Mhm.
That was going to be their fill of sign or of Checo. They would go back there because Checo would be about 38 by then, and they figured they would, that's enough of Checo. Then they bring Albon back into the fold. Or there was word he could be the replacement for Lewis at at Burke too,
Yeah, I
at
feel like
Mercedes also.
we just talked about this,
Yeah,
like, a week or 2 ago too, so that yeah, that was pretty surprising
yeah.
to see
So he
that.
signed a multi-year deal. I mean, and I've had a lot of friends ask me, well, why? And I think I can. I mean, there was an interesting part if you remember Drive to Survive this year with him because I think they did a segment on Williams and him.
Yep.
And there was him, sitting in Jim Valve's office when he got there, and when Valve's got there and talked about things and about raising it and like he's and they say we want to win and Albon's kind of chuckling like, well, yeah, sure, we want to win, but we know we're not, right?
Right.
And he's like, no,
Right.
I don't believe that. I believe we can. I believe we can make this a team that can win, and I think that kind of inspired him a little bit. And I also think that I think that, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is I think that he believes in Valves, that he
Mm.
can really raise that team up. He can drag them up. Now with the cost cap, they've got, limit. They have less of a deficit to other teams as far as what they can spend. The only real problem Williams has is that because they've been in such dire financial straits for about a decade before the current owners came along and bought them out from Claire and the Williams family, what was left of the Williams family after Frank died, is that they need infrastructure. And
Right.
they're looking at a dispensation where they can add to infrastructure without taking it out of the cost cap for the year, because there is no capital allocation budgets in that. It's basically, okay, you want to buy a new wind tunnel, fine. You got to pay for it out of your 138 million or whatever it is per year, which is great if you're Red Bull, or great if you're a high end team that already blew all their or spent all their money on infrastructure before the cost cap came along. Those that didn't, that couldn't, like Williams, are now a decade behind in their technology in many areas.
Do you think there's anything to I know it's a little bit of a pivot on the Albon conversation, but do you think there's anything to like right? He's had the Red Bull experience. He knows if he goes back there, or honestly, even to Mercedes, although I guess maybe it'd be a little bit more competitive if it was over at Merck. Do you think there's anything to being like he's the guy at Williams?
Yeah, he's a team leader.
Yeah, and he gets to
He's
be
the number
like
one driver if you want to designate such a thing.
exactly
Absolutely,
instead of
yeah,
yeah. I wonder if that like
yeah,
he's probably finding some comfort and maybe some
yeah.
confidence in Williams.
And vice versa. Williams feels that they see that in him,
Hmm.
or they wouldn't have signed him. So I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't like they had to sign him. They didn't have to. They could have said, "Nope, thanks." drivers market's full of people this year.
Yeah.
Nico Hulkenberg could, well, then he went to Audi, but Magnussen's on the market. Tons of people. We could get Carl. Maybe we could convince Carlos Sainz to come here.
Hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe we can convince Adrian Newey to come here. Type
Right.
of thing. Val's even talked about that because he started his career at Williams. Well, he started his F1 career at Williams before going to McLaren, before going to Red Bull. So
And
he's already.
I could also see Williams, like, if they wait any longer and maybe Albon really starts like, then the big dogs come knocking a little bit more,
Yeah.
or a little bit more loudly, and it becomes harder to re-sign him or more expensive to extend him.
Yeah.
And so it's probably they're each scratching each other's back right
They
now.
like him. He seems to be getting. He likes them. He has faith in Val's. It appears they like him. He gives good feedback. He's been leader. He's been scoring points more than anybody
Hmm.
else has in that car. And he obviously he's not getting a $30 million contract. I'm sure he's
Right.
probably
Right.
getting, I don't know, 5 to 10, maybe 8. I would guess somewhere in that area, maybe 10. So he's not going to cost them a fortune to sign. Remember, the driver salaries don't count as part of the cost cap, but so costs on what you can spend. You still, the cost cap is one thing, but you're still your total budget, or if your ability to make a profit or loss, is still factored on everybody you pay,
Hmm.
regardless if they're a team driver or not. So it's still an outlay of cash, even if it doesn't cost against the cost cap. So it's still something you got to factor in there, and you get him for a good deal, a guy who can lead a team. I mean, he's probably going to be about as cheap as you can get for a guy who's possibly capable of being a team leader. Other
Right.
than maybe you could get Bottas for that, and I guess
Right.
Bottas could be a team leader type of situation.
Right.
So yeah, I think it seemed like it's a decent deal because evidently he wasn't getting what he wasn't being offered what he was hoping to get from the other teams. From Mercedes, maybe wasn't interested, or really seems like Mercedes is just waiting. They really would like to lure Max away. That doesn't seem like it's likely. Plus, they got the whole Kimi Antonelli thing that they're kind of playing the
Right.
long game on, and Toto doesn't seem to be interested in making a move right now. He doesn't seem like he doesn't feel he needs to make a move right now.
Yeah.
And the rest of the market is kind of clogged up with Max. If Max makes some moves, then the entire chessboard changes. Max doesn't make a move, then the chessboard's different, but it's not as different as it is if Max changes. So that's kind of the thing. And it's like, and then it's Sainz. I think Sainz is the second big clog in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Once Max says like I'm staying or I'm going and makes a formal declaration, then
Right.
everyone's gonna start, okay, where does Sainz
Where
go?
does science go? He
Does he go to
becomes the
Audi?
guy.
Does he go to Merck? Does Red Bull jettison Checo? Does he go somewhere else? Does Williams lure back Adrian Newey and he goes to Williams? I mean, something
Hmm.
weird like that can still happen. So you don't really know what's going to happen there with that. And those two things are what are clogging the driver market, which is really early because generally these things don't happen until till the leaves start showing up on trees in Europe. And
Right.
we're a little bit early for that still. So yeah,
Right.
it is interesting. But if we want to pivot a little bit on, we're talking about moves around teams. Mercedes and Ferrari seem to be spending a lot of time poaching each other's teams, or poaching each other's employees right now, and not in the driver market because we already know Ferrari poached away Lewis Hamilton. And I'm not sure that these changes are really directly affected by Lewis Hamilton because actually a couple of them were actually last year, but evidently Mercedes and Ferrari have kind of cut a deal with each other where they're going to they're going to release some of their employees early from their gardening leave. Some of them weren't really going to be eligible to move until the start of 25, and I guess they're going to let them go on October 1st of this year. But Ferrari's losing its chief designer, Simone Resta, and Enrique Sampo, who's the head of performance software, meaning he writes the engineering software code, or he leads that team. And Mercedes is losing chief aerodynamicist Giovanni Vino, Luca Serra, who's head of who's a performance director, and Jerome D'Ambrosio, who is a former driver and he's head of the driver development. Now, Ambrosio is going to be a deputy team principal over Ferrari. That's a senior, that's senior role reporting directly to Fred Vasseur. And he was, if you remember, there were a couple of weekends last year where Toto wasn't at the track and they named this three-headed triumvirate that was running the team. And I think, if I remember right, um, D'Ambrosio was one of those three. So he was basically one of the three guys that was running the team because Toto had a knee replacement. And remember, with the season getting 24 races, some of the principals are kind of passing on some of the races because they just don't want to take the time away. I mean, Toto's got a young family. His wife is Susie Wolf. They've got 3 kids. She runs a busy schedule. So he was home and he had his knee replaced at one point. So yeah, so you'll see that, and so he's a senior guy. I mean, he's just not a technical guy. He's a business guy. he runs a key part of that team. And he's kind of like a sounding board. I wouldn't really call him the Marco Helmet of Mercedes, but he's got a similar role as far as driver development and talking with the drivers. And he obviously would have a key role in Kimi Antonelli's future. But he'll be leaving, and all these guys will be swapping their roles between the two teams as of October 1st.
Is that a frequent like I know people move within jobs all the time, but to
Yes.
go from like rival to rival, do we see that
Yeah, it's a very incestuous business
yeah.
because it's a very unique skill set. And you're not going to be, other than generally at those levels, yeah, you're hiring people from within. You
Mhm.
may, in a rare case, get a guy come over from IndyCar or something, but
Okay.
they're going to be coming out of a competitive series. Most definitely, more than likely going to come out of F1 just because the skill set's so
Okay.
unique. You're not going to hire a marine biologist to go start working in an investment banker type of
Right. I didn't know if they
situation. But
would
yeah,
move like if they'd be more likely to move to a smaller team instead of going like to the direct
it
competition,
depends.
but
Like that guy we talked about, Sanchez,
mhm.
who moved from Ferrari to a McLaren and now went to Alpine. Now
Okay.
he kind of, you know, uh, Ferrari to McLaren, call it an equal, call it maybe a stepish down, but he's kind of getting a slightly more senior role.
Mhm.
With Didn't work out, and that was part of the thing was he thought he had a senior role. They didn't think he had a senior role, and they were giving him senior role tasks. When he left to go, so when he left and he showed up at Alpine, he's a department head now. He's a senior guy.
Okay.
He's gonna be their head aerodynamicist.
Okay.
So he's basically going to be close without them having a technical director, be close to what a technical director is. And he's going to probably be coming in and making lots of suggestions and stuff. So yeah,
Gotcha.
you can basically go from like a Ferrari down to a second tier team, but get a, a director's job or a, the main role job. It's something
Gotcha.
type of thing. The aerodynamicist leaving is interesting. At Ferrari, I guess he'd been former, so I guess he'd been replaced. I'm not sure what he's doing. And the other three people I'm not really familiar with, but yeah, they do move around a lot. It's just interesting that Ferrari and Mercedes have been going at it because I know that was part of the whole, if you want to call it the tension between Toto and Christian, was that they'd been poaching each other's people too. Mostly when Merck had been doing well, Toto or Christian had been poaching his engine people. And because remember they started that whole Red Bull powertrains
Oh,
thing,
right. Yeah.
and he was poaching because Mercedes was the number one engine, and he was poaching. They were poaching a lot of senior Mercedes engine people, and that wasn't making Toto happy. And that tends to happen. You'll see that when teams get to the pinnacle, especially for the 5-6 years that Mercedes has been,
Mhm.
people will change because it's like, okay, look, I've been putting in 16-hour days, 6 days a week, maybe 7 days a week for 6 years now. We've got the rewards for it. We got the spoils for it. Let's, either I want to take some time off or I want to go work for another team and where I'm going to be, instead of the deputy something, I will be the director of this. I will be the guy
Right.
running it, and I can take my experience. And teams like to hire that. We want to hire winners. You can make
Mhm.
us a winner. We want to hire a winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's kind of the way it works. Generally, the guys will start that come into it will start like out of college or out of something else at one of the lower teams, or maybe they'll get lucky and they'll wind up at a Ferrari as an entry level person. But then they may do well at like a Haas,
Mhm.
and then be able to get a similar
Yeah,
job,
moved up.
yeah, to the team,
Yeah.
just like it works in the corporate world.
Yeah.
It's pretty similar type of situation. You don't start
Cool.
as a individual programmer, you can become a
Right.
programming manager at Google. So
Right.
that'd be nice.
Yeah.
So one thing on talking about changing the stuff is there is a new engineer over at Ferrari. Charles Leclerc's head engineer has been promoted, and he's actually going to be working with driver development going forward. And they brought in the number two guy who is now going to be his engineer. Now this isn't all that unusual, but it is kind of odd to do this mid-season. The last time somebody did this mid-season, or like Ferrari did it, was like 2006 or 2007, where they changed a engineer mid-season because these guys have good relationships. I mean, Lewis and Bono.
Mhm.
Bonington actually is their name. They call him Bono. And the same thing. Remember, you know how you've heard um, Max and his engineer Lambiasi go back and forth. I mean, they almost bicker like a married couple in some ways. And it
Yeah.
really is a relationship like that. I mean, as somebody stated, other than your family, you spend more time with your team engineer than anybody else in
Mm.
your life. So they have, very codependent relationships in
Yeah.
many ways. And just kind of break that mid-season is kind of odd. Not really sure what to make of it yet, because it's like, is this just Ferrari being Ferrari and we're kind of emotional and didn't think it through? Is it something, or is there some sort of a problem there? Or is it like this guy said, look, if you don't give me a better job, I'm quitting. And this other guy said, look, you've been promising me a promotion for a long time. You haven't delivered, type of situation. I don't know. I mean, there's more to this though than is being released, and maybe someone will figure it out and I'll see some rumor somewhere on the
Yeah,
internet or something. But right
it
now,
sounds like something we'll get a lot more information on when the season ends, like where
yeah,
when it dies down a little bit. Because you're right, that does seem a little odd for that to happen mid year.
mid-season, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a normal thing. And real quickly, one last thing before we move on to Imola is, you remember the Kevin Magnussen penalties? Second time he's done this in
Mhm.
Miami, and then of course he did it previously in, I'm drawing a blank, where he was Saudi Arabia, where he basically was the lead blocker. If you've ever seen Smokey and the Band, you understand what a blocker is.
Mhm.
As far as trying to get points for Mr. Hulkenberg. And the problem is that the FA's current system doesn't really penalize them enough. Now, Magnussen has accumulated enough penalty points because of these actions to put him 2 points away from a race ban. And I believe you have to get 10 or 12. So that's not that many. Basically, if he has another bad race like this again, he's probably going to have enough race points where he would be forced to sit down a race, which would be good for Bierman probably,
Right,
but
right.
different story. But yeah, but they're kind of thinking, and a lot of the teams and the drivers are complaining, especially ones that have been behind him, going like, look, yeah, fine, you're giving him a minute's worth of penalties, wonderful, but his race has already been ruined. Giving him another 20 seconds when his race is already ruined is meaningless to him. And it's not getting him to move over. It's not getting him to stop blocking. It doesn't fix the problem for the drivers behind him. And they're looking at ways where they're going to make it much more. Maybe it'll be penalties that'll be added to a future race. Maybe there'll be grid spot drops in a future race rather than just time penalties. Maybe there will be additional penalty points going on your license, type of situation.
Okay.
But they're looking at it and they're trying to restructure to make it really, because it's not really a loophole. He's just kind of found a weakness in the regulations where, yeah, sure, throw everything you want. I mean, you've given me a minute worth of penalties. Congratulations, I'm 20th, not 18th.
Right, right.
Doesn't solve
And
anything. And there's 4 guys behind him who, because they can't get past him because he's been so wide on the track, that their races have been ruined. Whereas
right,
before, it used to be where, like, you just give the guy the time penalty and that would ruin his day. But he was already, he already knew he wasn't scoring points. It,
right.
it
So
didn't
it
matter at that
doesn't.
point. Yeah.
I am surprised there's not like a financial component to it.
But think about it. 2 points at the end of the year could be $12 or $15 million.
Right,
And
right.
I'm sure the team, if you're finding them 500,000, sure.
Yeah,
Here's the check. You want a wire transfer? How do you want it paid?
yeah,
Cash,
yeah.
check. Gladly. 500,000 to get an extra 8 million, 10 million in prize money, not a problem.
Right, right.
So yeah, so that doesn't even work unless you really make it substantial, and then you got problems because I don't know if it goes against the cost cap and those
Hmm.
types of things. I know it's supposed to go into a fund for something. I forgot what it is, but so they're kind of looking at it going, is this, like I said, it's not really a loophole. You just found a weakness in the regulations.
Right.
So they supposedly are going to be adding more penalties and harsher penalties to this, and maybe penalties that would affect future races rather than just that race. It's where it's already been tanked.
Yeah.
So be it. All right, hey, let's plug the Formula One Fantasy League. Go ahead and put a drop, if you would, in there for that, and give
Sure.
everyone who wants to join us. I got to set my team. Mike, have you set your team yet for this week?
I was just tinkering with it right before we started, so I would have the
Very
link
good.
up.
Everybody hasn't signed up. It's a week-to-week thing, so you can join us and compete against us on a weekly basis and see how poor I do and how I can't really get beyond the top 2 good drivers that consistently
Yeah.
finish that I can afford. It's just brutal.
I'm seeing
So
that my selection of Lance Stroll this past Miami Grand Prix is what was really holding me down here, because Lando for 50 points was nice, but when you
hey, good
take
job.
-19 for Lance Stroll, it's pretty tough.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah. I've
Remember,
always given.
we were all excited. No, I wouldn't say we were all excited, but there was some excitement around Lance Stroll about a year ago, where it's like
Mhm.
maybe he finally figured it out, and I don't know if we've gotten over that hump yet.
No, he's still a little bit of a mystery. I mean, he's not Nicholas Latifi, where Rich Dad gets him team, Rich Dad buys team from Latifi's
Right,
dad. Didn't do that.
right.
But Um, but he is decent at times. He's won a pole. He's not like he's completely out there, but sometimes you just kind of wonder, like, does he really want to be there? Just
Yeah.
doesn't always seem like it's like, I got better things to do. Because like there's word he could go out and play, like, he's close enough to be a professional tennis player, which
Oh,
seems
really?
kind of yeah. Yeah, there was rumor last year he was going to go quit and try to play the ATP tour.
Wow.
So I didn't know he was that good at tennis, but so be it. But hey, yeah, um, well, we'll have to see what with him with what the heck is going on, because we talk about Yuki a little bit. Honda's moving to Aston Martin as part of
Mhm.
the 26 engine changes, and and Honda is pretty much tied to Yuki.
Right.
And are they going to want a second? And Fernando will be there through 26. So are they going to dump Lance for Yuki? Are they going to, they can't dump Fernando. Fernando could leave after 26. They could
Right.
put Yuki on the bench maybe for the year. But really, if you're Honda, do you want to run Lance Stroll and Yuki? I mean, no shot at Yuki, but it's kind of a Lance
Y
Stroll shot
No,
for
I
a
mean,
team that's.
I
Go ahead.
feel like Yuki, if you're a competitive team right now, I feel like Yuki is a great second driver.
Sure. Yeah.
But if yeah, if you yeah, that's not where you want to be. And no
No.
disrespect to
No.
Yuki. I love Yuki. I think he's having a great year.
Yeah.
But
Now
no.
maybe he'll step up at the next 18 months, and you could see him as a team leader.
Yeah.
18 months ago, would you ever thought Albon was a team leader?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
have to see. I'm not saying he will. I hope he does. I like Yuki. I mean, he's
Yeah.
entertaining. He's fun.
Yeah.
He's, unfortunately, he's got no filter time, so he's quite funner
That's
when it comes to that part of it. But yeah,
right.
um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. And again, so that's one of those balls. Unfortunately, that's a 26 ball. We're still just basically throwing around the 25 balls as far as where people are going to land,
Right.
type of situation. And you would think right now, just I mean, real quick, you'd think that Yuki's safe at VCARB for next year. Daniel, probably not safe at this point.
Yeah, maybe
And
not
Liam
so much.
Lawson's standing right there and definitely deserves a race seat. So, and then the problem becomes even, but think about it a little bit more. Let's say Daniel does step up and start scoring, and they both start scoring points, and they're equally, you look at both drivers and say, yeah, those guys are guys that are worthy of a job. Then we do with Liam Lawson. You got to find him a seat. Do you farm him out to Williams? Do you farm him out? And that's the problem they had with Albon was
Right.
when they got rid of Albon, he basically had to commit to cutting all of his Red Bull driver ties because they were not going to pick him up unless he did. So, because he was running Red Bull endurance cars the year that he was out after he got booted for Checo in 21, I think it was, and then he came back in 22 to Williams around 22 and now 23 and then 24 this year there before
Right.
getting signed. But it was basically he had to agree to basically whatever it was, cut ties, whatever it was, to Red Bull and be removed from their driver program. He was not part of their driver program anymore because they did not want him passing information because of the engine manufacturing stuff.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see how that works out. But we are in Imola this week. We are in Italy. We actually get to have a race this year. Unfortunately, unlike last year, when tragic floods hit the area and basically made it impossible for them to run a race. Track was still there, but because of the surrounding situations and all that, unfortunately, the area is recovered. And actually, Yuki's at home this week. Yuki
Oh
lives in
yeah.
that area because they're not far from where the Red Bull factory is, because that was the old former Minardi team, which was an Italian team. They kept the facilities. Now they're going to move a lot of it this year over to Britain, to the facility that's kind of a sister site with Red Bull as being the Red Bull second team or junior team. But Yuki lives currently full time in Italy, so he's able to drive at home. He's stay at home, make his own coffee in the morning, sleep in his own bed. So we'll see later on. Maybe that contributes to Yuki doing well this week. We'll have to see.
Well,
But classic track, it's been around for years. It's funny because I remember Imola when they used to run it 30, 40 years ago or 30 years ago. And it was like, I was never a fan of the track. But then came, I was like, hey, this is kind of a cool track now. I don't know what's really changed, or if it's because of the perspectives, camera angles, or what. But it's a more interesting track to me than it was before. Unfortunately, there's a lot of dark history there. This is the 30th anniversary of the Ayrton Senna death and Roland Ratzenberger, which is one of the darkest weekends in Formula One. And as I was thinking about that as I was putting this together, it's like we should probably do a show, not during the season. After the season, it'd be a good show to do during the off season. on
Mhm.
kind of breaking down that weekend and all the things that went on. Because
Sure.
obviously we've got a lot of people here that are new to the sport that have been watching it less than 5 years.
Right.
And being an older guy that likes to get off my lawn, kid. I like to talk about things that have happened in the past. So I think it'd be an interesting one because it's a really interesting. It was a very formative weekend for the future of F1 too. Not just the fact that it was the unfortunate death of Ayrton Senna. And I actually
Right.
still have I have two things on VHS tape. Yes, I'm old from that because I used to tape those races because as they still do, they come on at 5 in the morning, and they were on ESPN in those days too. And I would basically tape them on VHS. And then when I get up, I'd play the tape. The first you had to do was you never knew how long it would run, so you had to set it for like 6 hours because you never if there'd be a crash or something, there'd be a red flag. So I got up at like 8 o'clock or like 7:30, and I checked it, and the race is still on. I'm going, wow, that's weird. That should have been over a while ago. And I don't remember what I did, but I basically then switched to something and looked at ESPN, and they were playing the Senna crash. Going, wait a minute, whoa, what's going on here? And then they have on the banner, Ayrton Senna died. It's like, whoa, this is
Wow.
this is really big news. And so I have the tape, watched it. But that's one of the two things I still have 30 years later somewhere in my house on VHS
Wow.
tape. Not that I have a VHS player anymore, but so be it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that was it's a really dark. It's a really dark weekend. Lots of stories. Like I said, lots of changes to this day that that F1's affected by, as far as driver safety and enhancements to cars
Right.
because of it. That affected. So it really was a turning point in F1 history. So,
Wow.
but yeah, there were drivers were out there. There's a memorial on site at Imola. The track's been slightly altered. There were two high speed corners, one of which where Senna ran off on, and another one where I think Ratzenberger had run off on, where they have now made those chicanes to slow down the track a little bit to make the track less quick.
Mhm.
But there is a monument near one of those on the inside of the track where this Thursday, yesterday, they had a memorial or that a memorial moment for him.
Nice.
Sebastian Vettel came back and ran it, and he's
Oh,
going to
really?
drive. Yeah, Vettel was there. He kind of led this because he went to the Senna family, and for the 30th anniversary, he's going to drive one of Senna's cars Sunday morning before the race around the track for a couple of laps to
That's cool.
to memorialize Senna on
Yeah.
that to celebrate his life and what he was. Because he was only I mean not only but he's a 3-time world champion, which is fairly significant. But he was killed in the prime of his career, and a guy that that maybe not have gotten a 7, but he certainly would have won one or two more. You would think
Right.
in his life because of that, and that he was running for the top team at the time of the crash. And yeah, so
Wow.
so that they were all wearing hashtag forever shirts with for Sen on it. So yeah, it's if you get a chance to look at the pre-race. Oh, either Kim Illman's got a video that's got some of it, or there was the F1's pre-race show has some
Okay.
tape of it. If you want on YouTube, you can look at it.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. Other than he wasn't, there's a comment in here about Senna was the Kobe of F1. Other than he was, it would have been if Kobe had died like in 2016 or 15 type of situation when he was still a player at the height of his career. But yeah,
Wow.
it is. It's someone who's tragically, lost, and the world loses out on learning his experiences and 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 who he was and what he could have been, and because Kobe was going on. I actually saw him one time because I worked in a building down in Orange County where he came in because they were looking for office space because he
Oh,
built
wow.
he built an animation business. I don't know whatever happened to him after his death. But this would
Yeah.
have been 2013 or 14,
Yeah.
and they brought him in because everyone like the entire it was all open office space, and like the entire 50 people stand up and are staring because there's this guy who's 6'8" that
Right.
walks into this building,
Still.
and yeah, who's like, wait a minute, is that Kobe Bryant? No, that wouldn't be. Why would Kobe be? And then we found out
Yeah.
later on that he was looking for office space, and ours building, the office we were in, was the most was the closest example of what he was looking to rent. So
That's
yeah,
great.
so didn't meet him. No one wanted. They were like very isolated. They wouldn't let anybody near him. But it was
Right.
those kind of things you didn't really realize what it was till afterwards. It was like, hey, man, that was Kobe Bryant,
Yeah.
the type of thing.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
but yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, to the community, absolutely, Kobe and Senna made a huge impact on the community in Brazil for fighting for the poor and rights and eco rights and stuff like that. He was very, very vocal in that type of
Yeah.
stuff. So absolutely, but yeah, great loss to both the community and to F1. and he was more, been memorialized. So it's kind of a little bit of a song because it's been the 30th anniversary of it.
Right.
And like I said, Vettel will be driving his car. So that kind of like is kind of kind of like the atmosphere that everyone's kind of looking at the race from. And also Rubens Barrichello, who may or may not know because he raced for a long time, was his rookie and he was injured in the crash. It was Friday. Was his injury. He was taken to hospital. Wasn't sure if he was going to survive. He had a very bad crash. Then Ratzenberger unfortunately was killed on Saturday qualifying, and then
Wow.
Senna died on Sunday. So it was a whole weekend of just
Yeah. Wow.
horribleness down there. I guess that's why it's a dark weekend in F1 history. So, but
Wow.
they have made some track changes unrelated to that this year because we talked about track limits a lot of the time,
Hmm.
where you get the guys that lose laps because they go off. Well, one of the surest ways to keep a driver from going off is putting gravel at the end of the track limit because you won't go into the gravel. The car doesn't run very well on gravel, so
Right.
they've changed. To see corners 1, 2, 13, and 14. Now I've taken gravel right to the edge of the track to where the track limits is, and at turn 9 they've added a gravel trap that used to be grass. So that'll hopefully keep the drivers reined in as far as trying to basically push the limits of the track and getting a little bit over. I mean, Japan was a track we saw that at
Yep.
where they were doing that. So yeah, so that's one of the things that it seems to be an issue. I mean, you're looking for every tenth matters. And
Right.
we'll talk about the difference even between 1 second, which seems like a lot, but how many places that can really change between 1 second. And there used to be times like during Senna's time, cars would be so dominant. I remember drivers being 1.3 or 1.4 seconds in pole lap first to second. So right now they're really, really compressed. So
Wow.
so be it. Yeah. So the track changes. Everybody's got upgrades. First European race, so everyone's got upgrades coming. Check out the short I did on Ferrari's upgrade.
Yeah,
So
that's a
they've
good
got
one.
a yeah they've oh great thanks they got a number of updates in there that they brought, but Red Bull's brought updates. That just about everybody's brought something from small to significant updates. So Ferrari significant. They're almost calling it a B spec car. New floor, new wings, new under trays, new side pods. So it's a significant upgrade for them. And as we see, maybe it paid off for them. Maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, type of thing. Um,
And
and
this is the time of year where last season where McLaren started to turn it on too,
yeah,
right? After
yeah,
their
just
upgrade.
about.
So it
Yeah,
will be interesting to see if anybody else, like if we see any noticeable differences or improvements
yeah.
or maybe going the other way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You see a lot of interesting things and it may depend on the season how things go, but if you go look at the first qualifying results or even farther back, FP1 at the first race in Bahrain to what
Hmm.
FP1 will be when we get to Abu Dhabi.
Right.
How the difference in the teams, and you also may see a significant difference in the differences between like first and 10th or first and fifth or first and sixth, how it's going to be compressing
Yeah.
as they get more and more. Everyone looks more and more and steals more and more. That's generally what a lot of this
Right.
is.
Right.
Is it's I mean, if somebody they go somebody's, and it's funny because many times you'll get low teams that don't have really any like a Haas that doesn't have a lot to risk, and they may try some sort of radical design, a different wing structure or something. It's like, hey, we're near the bottom as it is. We'll try the radical wing. Maybe our aerodynamicist is a genius. We hired the next Adrian Newey as a junior aerodynamicist, and we didn't know that. It happened to work out that way 20 years from now. We'll figure it out. Because
Right.
he was Adrian Newey was a junior aerodynamicist somewhere, junior designer at some team at some point. Actually, it was
Right.
called Leighton House in those days. But so be it. You didn't know at the time the guy was a genius. Maybe he looked at it, maybe he didn't look like it. So be
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so and that's where those things come from. And everyone, if you always again Newey, watch him. He's always walking around. He's got a little notebook with him, and he'll look at the cars on the grid when he's at the races,
Hmm.
and he'll jot stuff down. He looks at the McLaren, or he looks at McLaren, looks at the Williams, looks at the Mercedes, looks at the Ferrari.
Yeah.
You know, jots things down, and those things may wind up as design enhancements. So that's like I said. He's not the head designer at Red Bull anymore, but he certainly has input on how things get done. So it'll be
Definitely.
interesting to see what they look like. The liveries are going to be the same, so they may not be all that. It's very subtle things that the team, the driver, the announcing teams will call out, especially
Hmm.
Karun Shandak, who's kind of an F1 nerd, even a former driver. He's really into that and notices very minute details about stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be calling because he's doing the color commentary this week. Track changes. Let's see. So Ollie Bierman ran an FP1 for Haas. He's going to have 6 sessions this year as part of the young driver program. So he wound up in 15th. What doesn't sound that great. Hulkenberg was 20th. So
Okay.
now they may not be on the same program. Hulkenberg may have done long or high fuel runs. Bierman may have done different ones because they generally break the first session practice up, and especially because they're going to lose one of, technically they're losing one of the 4 sessions to the experienced drivers
Right.
with Bierman doing that. And Ayu Komatsu, who's the team principal now at Haas, since Gunter's departure, said basically, he's done well at Ferrari in the Saudi race. If we wind up signing this guy for next year, it's going to be based upon what he shows us in FP1 and what his feedback is to the engineers after FP1s. So he's basically, this is his audition. This is one of his 6 auditions for
Yeah.
a Haas seat. Now Ferrari has a fair amount of sway, and I'm pretty sure if they, unless he really like crashes every car and costs them, $4 million in repair expense, he's going to probably wind up in that seat.
Yeah.
Saying something bizarre happening. So he's probably going to wind up there, but he's got to kind of make it sound like he's really auditioning drivers.
Right. Right.
So, but he did 15th, wasn't bad. I think he's probably about 1.3 seconds off the top, because I think first to 10th on there was first to 12th was 1.8 seconds. Yeah, so he's probably about 1.2 or
Okay.
1.3 seconds back of the leaders, and it was Leclerc, Russell, and Sainz. So, spoiler alert: Ferrari changes seem to have come through.
Yeah.
They seem to be corresponding to on-track performance. Max was way out of shape a lot of the time. A couple of gravel traps, quasi spin, missed a couple of corners. Wound up in FP1. He wound up 5th.
And
Had lots of issues.
I'm sure his comments after were very measured and calm.
Oh, of course, he's Max. Yes, nothing but very cerebral comments too. Yes, very on point, cerebral, great design, great engineering talent there, Max Verstappen. So now I shouldn't mock him for that, but yeah. But then again, you got Yuki out there too. But Yuki,
That's true.
yeah, but Max is becoming like that. Let's see, Albon car basically turned off after he hit a curb, which may sound a little odd, but he literally, I think he landed on the curb, and it's a known thing in the F1 cars. They have a tendency to shut down if you smack a curb too hard, and I don't mean tire-wise, like you put the floor of the car landed hard on a curb.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if it's a G sensor or what, but it's happened before. Certain Williams seem to be a little more susceptible to it than others. Then again, maybe their drivers run over the tops of curbs more often than other teams do. So you can't really discount that part of it either.
Right.
But yeah, it's not the first time it's happened. It's kind of one of those things. I remember there used to be a problem in Singapore with the cars where, because that's a street circuit, they would run over a metro rail, the rail system, the MR, I think it's MRT in Singapore.
Okay.
Junction box for the electronics, and they had one year where it was shutting the cars down. It was basically freaking out the transmissions, and they would find a fault detector, and it triggered a fault on the electronics, and the cars would shut down.
Wow.
And they had to basically put shielding on the bottom of the cars to keep those signals from affecting the aerodynamics, the electronics on the F1 cars.
Yeah.
And everyone always, whenever you go back to Singapore, you always kind of in the back of your head, was this going to be a problem again, or has this been cured after? It's been a number of years, been 6, 7, maybe even 8 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cars are known for hitting bottom, and it will kind of screw up the electronics on the cars. And
wow.
so like I said, Leclerc, Russell, Sainz, good for Russell. I think Lewis was 7th or 8th.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel also had a visit to the gravel trap. Oh yeah, Max's comment. Yes, thank you. I should have caught that when you said it earlier. Max's comment was, "This is a catastrophe." So yes, he was very level-headed about it. Sorry, I missed the missed the lead there.
You're good. Well, I'm seeing your notes for FP2. I mean, pretty like surprising to see him do worse than FP2. So maybe there is some truth to his catastrophe remarks.
Yeah, he wound up 7th in FP2, which is even worse. But in FP2, you had Leclerc again. This time you had Oscar Piastri and, drumroll, Yuki Tsunoda.
There we go, my man.
Man, he must really like home cooking.
Right?
He is cooking at home. Absolutely. He is 3rd. Great for Yuki. God bless him. That's wonderful. Yeah. And of course, now probably 52% of the field or 52% of the entrants are going to pick Yuki on their teams. So if you had Yuki early as a hunch, you've just lost it now.
I know.
It's blown. He's going to be on a lot of teams because he's very cheap, and you don't get many drivers that are 3rd they're that cheap in the F1 fantasy. So Sainz is 6th, Max 7th, half second back. They were noticing at the start of FP2, they had the lasers on the car, basically checking ride height and making sure everything checked out, everything
Okay.
was legal, everything matched up, everything was level and square. And so that means they've done some aero changes in between the two sessions. So, but it doesn't look like they made a lot of difference because he was seventh in that. Williams had issues. Albon didn't get out immediately because again they were working on something, and Mr. Sargent was also late getting out. And I didn't ever see if they said what happened as to why I didn't catch it. I was only watching FP2 real quickly as I was trying to work in the background. So be it. So yeah, Ferrari's looking strong. Interesting to see, to see Mercedes back up there, but we'll have to see how that translates. We have FP3 tomorrow, and then we have qualifying. But yeah, it's good to see that. McLaren, Piastri was there, but not Lando, and Lando was a little unhappy in FP1. I heard a couple of chats or a couple of the radio calls back. We'll have to see. This isn't a track that they expected to do well at,
Okay.
but you never know. And like I said, there's lots of teams with upgrades. I think even they've got some upgrades too. Okay, I'm sorry. I know what it was. They have Lando had all the upgrades in Miami. Piastri only had part of the upgrades. Now Piastri's got a full set of upgrades in Imola, so that's
Hmm.
their upgrades. They brought him a week. They dragged him all the way across the Atlantic to Miami, and obviously it paid off for Lando. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, especially with Piastri being second. Again, or sorry, Piastri, yeah, Piastri being second. So we've got let's see, hang on, one, two, three, four separate teams in the top three in one of those sessions. None of them are Red Bull.
Wow. Yeah, that's
So unless you
that's
count
pretty
VCarb as part of the Red Bull team.
yeah.
And that's pretty sad if you've got your junior team outdoing you, kind of like when McLaren won with Lando. When you're beating the factory Mercedes team, that's not a good look
No.
for the factory team. That is, it's a great
Yeah.
look for you.
No, that's how people get fired
Yeah,
typically.
exactly. That's a bad look. And Toto has said that they brought upgrades, and he still thinks that he made a comment, or someone on Mercedes made a comment that they think that they can build that they will have as they develop through the season a car that they believe can win races by the end of the season. So
Hmm. We'll see.
I don't know if that's confidence. They haven't
Yeah.
delivered yet. And plus now you're going to get into a situation coming up pretty soon, if not already, where you're going to start locking Lewis out of some conversations
Right.
because you want to isolate him from the team. You can't put him on gardening leave.
No.
Now, like you can with Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey will show up at a few races, but he's kind of already officially starting gardening leave. He'll start somewhere between January 1st and April 1st over at Ferrari, or not Ferrari, I'm saying that already, wherever it
Right.
is he goes. And by
Right.
the way, for an update on Newey this week, there is word that he doesn't seem like, even though he's got a brand new $20 million yacht showing up on his driveway sometime in the next few months, it doesn't seem like he's just going to go quit and sell the yacht
Yeah.
immediately. That's still in his plans, but doesn't seem like it's going to be what he'll be spending 25 doing. Sounds like he is interested in joining another team. Hasn't really given out any hints yet. There's word earlier that he wasn't going to go to Aston Martin. Of course, Ferrari's the obvious choice. They would fill the yacht with gold bars provided it doesn't sink to bring him over there. And they will do anything. But again, maybe he wants to go back to Williams. Obviously Williams can't pay him as much as Ferrari can. But
Yeah.
the Ferrari thing is a real life changer. It'd be like, imagine you're 65 years old, you live in England, and you're going to have to go move to Italy and learn Italian. Now, some of
Yeah.
that they may be able to basically kind of not enforce for Adrian Newey, but that's kind of a life change. That's
Yeah.
at 65 to
Yeah.
learn a
That
new
is.
language. That's tough.
No, he's in his like if you compare it to soccer, he's in his like MLS era, It's like Messi coming over. You don't want to go Messi didn't go to the Premier League. He went to the MLS for retirement. So like Newey should not be go to Williams,
Yeah,
Go to go
yeah.
you want to go
Here's
coast.
25 million a year, and you get to live in Miami.
Yeah, right. Go do that version,
Yeah,
Go do that
the
version.
Beckham thing when he came to LA, didn't he?
Yeah, came to
Yeah, Beckham to
Galaxy.
LA. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting way to look at it. He doesn't want, yeah. Messi didn't go to the German league and learn German.
Right, right.
At his point, yeah, not happening. So
No.
yes, I don't know that. I mean, I would say if you take that part out of, you take what it would entail for Newey to do that. 100% Ferrari would be the number one choice to
Mhm.
me, without a doubt. Because he said before, he you know he is sad that he never got to work with Lewis, and he's disappointed he never got to design a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And he owns some Ferraris, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that just seems like a slam dunk. But it's not the easy choice. It's like going to Aston Martin, which he supposedly says he hasn't done. Is like it's like an 8-mile drive from where Red Bull is. I think it's closer to his house than where Red Bull is.
Mhm.
So that just seems like, if you're looking at the logistics, seems like a slam dunk. And I know that whatever money that Ferrari can throw at him, Lawrence Stroll's got probably about as much money to throw at him.
That's
So
yeah,
I don't think
absolutely
money's
right.
gonna. This is not gonna be a money problem for either way. Plus, Adrian is probably fairly wealthy if he's buying $20 million yachts.
Yeah,
So,
that's also true.
it's not like he's worried about filling out that 401k so that he
That's
can
all
retire with enough money to not have to, Airbnb his spare bedroom out.
right. Right. That's
So,
fun.
but yeah. So yeah, so that's again, that's one of those many stories in development. So yeah. Mike, any questions you got, or anything we didn't, you think we need
No,
to cover?
I feel like we hit most of it. I'm
Okay.
excited to I guess like let's as we pivot into predictions here. What
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, like, do you how much are you buying into Max's comments and what we saw from Red Bull and FP1 and FP2? Or are you just like I'm putting Red Bull back at the top?
You know what? I think they'll get most of the way back. The Ferrari looks quick.
Yeah.
I think you'll see a red car at the top of the podium this week. I think there'll be a Red Bull. And I think Max will be on the podium though, but I
Yeah.
don't think he'll be maybe second, probably third. I'm going to guess. I wouldn't be surprised to see similar to FP2. The thing is, Leclerc needs to start stepping up because Sainz has cleaned his clock this year,
Hmm.
and it's for the it really is embarrassing for Ferrari. Like, okay, here's the two drivers. Wait a minute, which one did we send packing? You mean the guy that's done the best this year? The guy that would have
Right.
been on every podium sans one, and he had an appendectomy that week.
Right. Right.
Okay, that's the guy we kicked out of the team. Okay,
I
good.
know.
Nice choice there, guys.
People will absolutely lose their job if that's what starts happening.
Yeah, and
Um,
absolutely. So Leclerc needs to, just for his own reputation, for his own street cred, he's got to
mhm,
step up. They're in Italy. They're not that far from the Ferrari factory in Modena.
right.
I'm going to say Leclerc. You know what? I'm going to go Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm gonna go too. I actually feel comfortable that that's where I was thinking, where I was gonna still put Max on the podium, but maybe Ferrari goes 1-2 because they do look really quick. Although
Yeah,
I am so tempted after seeing the FP2 numbers to get little home cooking, like you said. Get you. I'll say Yuki finishes top 5 though. How
yeah,
about that? How about
yeah.
that for a hot
I
take?
can see Yuki at fifth. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it might be a little too spicy to put Yuki on a podium.
But that would certainly solidify his drive.
Absolutely,
Certainly
absolutely.
solidify his drive. And I
Yeah,
certainly hope Daniel gets it worked out. I mean, as
yeah,
much as I'd like to see Daniel stay in F1, it's not looking good for him right. I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe Williams decides, if Kimi Antonelli doesn't show up there, something else happens. They put Antonelli
yeah,
into Mercedes. Maybe Daniel winds up at
yeah.
Williams or Haas next year.
It feels like, Brett Favre at the end of his career a little bit, where it's just I almost like I want to remember Daniel
Yeah,
happy,
yeah, I know that's true. Yeah,
but
yeah,
and again, it's sometimes like you can be like, well, it's if he was racing on like oh my god, what's the Valtteri Bottas's team?
Sauber, Audi.
Sauber, right? If he
Yeah,
was on a team like that where they were just getting spanked week in and week out, it's like, wow, maybe it's the team, it's the
yeah,
car. But like when you see Yuki getting a seventh, we're like, well, maybe it's a little more Daniel than it is RB2.
yeah,
So I don't know.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and like I said, I really like him too.
I do
But
too.
you know what? I'm sure, unless Christian winds up getting booted out of Red Bull, I'm sure Christian would gladly again give him an ambassador role
Oh,
at Red Bull.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and also, by the way, I don't know if I sent you the link. He's it's about 18 months ago it first came up, but evidently it's still moving forward. He's been working with one of the students to develop a TV series based on F1.
Oh yeah, yeah, over at Hulu, I think, right? I think
Yeah,
I read
exactly.
that. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
good call.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hulu. Yeah, I don't know if I posted the link, but there was more news on in Variety this week.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so off this, or maybe a week ago, but between the two races, where I think they've done some casting or somebody's joined up a show. I forgot what it was. There was some news because I'd forgotten about it until I saw the link. Oh yeah, I remember that one because it was like December of 22. I want to say but then it's just kind of disappeared because it didn't seem to go anywhere. But yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
he's still, so he's obviously working on stuff that, because he has a house here in L.A.
Right.
And it's funny because he showed pictures of him eating Roscoe's chicken, sitting on top of Mulholland, looking over the San Fernando Valley,
That's
which is,
pretty funny.
oh, by the way, sitting on the wing of his McLaren Senna McLaren Senna car,
Of
which is like
course.
a $1.2 million car.
Yeah, not
Um,
bad.
but the thing about with him, maybe a little bit less now, but still, most of the Formula One guys, I think I've said this before, real quick. Most of the Formula One guys in America can just go anywhere they want. Nobody knows who they
Right.
are.
I
Still,
remember I remember he was on it was the Smartless podcast, I think. And I remember during that conversation he had even said that that's why he, like, when he goes on vacation, he would go on vacation here
yeah,
for that reason, because he would be left alone.
yeah, no one knows who he is. If he goes in Europe or Australia, he's mobbed. Michael
Right.
Michael Schumacher in his heyday used to do it too. He said Michael Schumacher used to walk down Fifth Avenue in New York. Maybe two people would recognize him at
Right.
most, and
Right.
they were probably Germans in America,
Right.
so or British or somebody who was an F1 fan. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, those are predictions. Take a look at them again. Everyone play Fantasy One or Fantasy
Yeah.
F1.
Let
Join
me
us. You
share
can
that link one more time too. There
and
we
you
go.
can match wits with Mike and I and make us look silly
There
because
we
I'm sure
go.
you'll do better than I will. Maybe Michael, maybe
No,
Michael will
I
show up on top this week. So, but you never
well,
know.
Lance Stroll's not going to be in the squad this week, so
Oh,
you should probably
oh,
roster him, because that means
Canadian
he's
hate there, Mike. Canadian
yeah.
hate.
But James, thank you as always, man,
Thank you.
for getting this going and doing the legwork.
Yep.
It was good. It was good to catch back up, and we'll be back next week talking about how Yuki got his first podium of the
Hey,
season.
there we go. Wow, we're optimists. All right.
All right, for James and myself, I hope everybody has a good weekend.